Hey, cuties. This is The Dark Side of Perfect. I'm your host, Maggie, and the title of this episode is Romanticizing Your Inner World. But what I really mean by that is finding ways to romanticize your life. So let's talk about it. On Instagram and social media, we think of romanticizing as a performance. The aesthetic of it, having a 20-step skincare routine, setting up your camera, filming yourself getting out of bed, putting on a silk nightgown before bed, fully embracing the performance of life. And while that is a part of it, I do think it's overused a little bit too much to represent the aesthetics and the social mediaization of life when it really comes from a place of presence and noticing the experience instead of rushing past it. And while it does include the vibe creation, obviously, the vibe creation doesn't always have to be a performance. And what romanticizing does is it helps you relate differently to what already exists and sort of create a story of your life to push it in the direction of finding more presence and more peace and maybe getting over the hurdle of the should trap by finding some of the joy and romantic nature of life. And that is what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about romanticizing your life, why it matters, the impact it has on your inner world, energy awareness, and then talk about some examples of how to bring this romanticization into your life. My friends always tell me that I'm excellent at this. I actually had a friend the other day, I was talking to her about romanticizing her life, and she told me that when she's making dinner with her husband that she always tells him, like, "What would Maggie tell us to do right now? We need to take a step back, move slower, curate a vibe, and really make this a moment instead of making it just making dinner." Why does romanticizing your life matter? Why should I create a moment or take a task and make it more romantic, make it more of a vibe when I could just be getting that task done, moving through my life with masculine energy, that hustle? Why does it matter? Well, perfectionism and productivity culture train us to live externally. So that's where that masculine energy comes in. And if you haven't listened to my masculine energy, feminine energy episode, I would recommend it. I'm going to reference it a lot in this episode. But the masculine energy, the hustle, it trains us to live externally. We want external output. We want the performance to be there. We want to be perceived in a way that matches society's expectations of us. And what romanticizing your life really does is turns your attention inward. It brings a bit more internal meaning to things, a bit more value, and that meaning making supports emotional regulation and the sensory engagement of vibe creation and romanticizing your life grounds the nervous system. So what romanticizing your life really does is helps you flip that switch from masculine energy, the hustle, the constant output, the fast paced hyperfixation, hyper productive, always being productive ideology into feminine energy, which thrives on sensation, imagery, intuition, and emotional texture. So, what romanticizing your life does is creates that emotional texture. It creates a foundation by which your feminine energy can stand on and give you the space to make that switch from masculine to feminine energy. What I have noticed while I've been romanticizing certain things in my life is the impact that it has on my inner world, on the voice in my head that tells me to constantly be productive and says horrible things to me because I'm a perfect girl. And so I have this inner thought, this inner monster in me that tells me these negative things all the time. But romanticizing my life and certain moments in my life that maybe I wouldn't romanticize while being stuck in my masculine energy, it helps me to re-establish my conversation with that voice and help us find a common ground between the masculine and the feminine energy. Our inner world, that voice, how our thoughts are made up, is shaped less by events and more by how we speak to ourselves. So, right now, your inner voice is replaying embarrassing moments, bringing up mistakes, speaking in shoulds. And that voice doesn't go away with healing and growth. But by creating a story and romanticizing aspects of our lives, we can change our relationship with the voice. We can become an observer to thoughts and narrate our own story and not be governed by the voice. So, as we move forward in this episode and talking about how to romanticize certain moments, how to step into our feminine energy in a more concrete way, energy awareness, just think that everything in this episode ties back to the conversation and the relationship that you have with that voice, and how sometimes it will play embarrassing moments and bring up past mistakes and speak in shoulds, but you are not governed by that voice. And at first, it's a very intentional choice. Very much, I'm going to create a vibe to create my own story and not be governed by the voice. And eventually, those moments will add up so that the voice will not disappear, but your relationship with it will change, and it will be easier to recognize when the voice is telling you something and move past it. Okay, step one to romanticizing your life: mood and energy awareness. And this took me a little bit of time to figure out. I didn't recognize that it was step one. So for me, it was like step 100. But I think it should be step one. Romanticizing your life requires noticing your natural rhythms. And what I mean by that is that schedules are often built around external demands: your to do list, your job, meetings, logistics, figuring out how to get from where to where, what people require of you, and not your internal energy. So, taking stock of your mood is really important before you start on the journey to romanticizing moments in your life. Or maybe as you're starting to romanticize moments and you want to figure out how to romanticize more moments so that they add up to being able to do it more frequently and without really thinking about it, you have to take stock of your mood. So, when you feel most creative, when you feel most focused and active, and when you feel most restful and reflective. For example, I feel most creative in the morning. I wake up, and assuming I don't go on my phone first thing, which I really try not to do, I don't sleep with my phone in the room. So I try not to go on my phone first thing. And when I don't, I feel most creative. I usually record my episodes in the morning. I usually will do a creative endeavor. I'll write something if I'm feeling like writing. So I wake up, and the first thing I do, I make my coffee and I sit down to do something creative because I know that that's the time when I'm most likely to do something creative. And if I wait until later in the day, then I usually am not in the right headspace, not in the right mood to do something creative. So I to do it in the morning. And that's my natural rhythm for creativity. I feel most focused and active after I eat breakfast. I usually will do a little bit of work after I eat breakfast, and then I'll do my workout. And middle of the day workouts are a little bit controversial because they increase your internal heat, a real like woo woo kind of term. They increase your internal heat in the middle of the day, and so you're not able to relax later in the day. But I find that that is not true of me. I really usually after I'm have a productivity session after I eat breakfast, I am feeling really tired. And so if I get movement, even if it's just a little bit, I recognize that that movement in the middle of the day will always help me to have a second wind. And then I feel most restful and reflective, usually, I mean, obviously at night because you are wanting to find that calmness, that relaxation to move into sleep and have good sleep hygiene. But I also feel the most reflective at night for some reason, right before I'm going to bed, I think a lot of us feel this way, is I feel very reflective. I think about the day, I think about things moving forward, I think about how I'm feeling. Allow myself to sit in that emotion, and I give myself the space before bed in order to have those reflective moments. And as I've said before, I'm not a journaler, but if you are a journaler, I know a lot of people journal in the morning and maybe you feel most reflective in the morning. If I were to journal, I would do it at night. Usually, right before I go to bed, my reflective practice is to do a brain dump. So, not necessarily journaling about my day, but a brain dump of everything I'm thinking. I don't organize it and then I let it go. And that's sort of my reflective nighttime practice. So these moods, once you notice them, and when you're in the hustle bustle of masculine energy, sometimes it's difficult to notice your natural rhythms, but I promise you can do it. And I think that you can see it. Sometimes you're just blind to it, or you don't want to see it because you want to be stuck in the hustle while you're in it. But you can notice your natural rhythms when you feel more one way or another. And these moods that you find yourself in are information. They can be used as data points to guide your schedule. So, being creative during those windows, being reflective during those windows. I will have an episode on like productivity tips and how I balance some of these ideas to find a flow and a schedule. But right now, what I'm talking about is taking a stock of your energy to find a collaboration between your inner life and your external life. So, going throughout your day, figuring out where you're feeling a pull towards a certain aspect of your life, where you're feeling a pull towards that hustle, where you're feeling a pull towards that creativity without thinking about the external demands. We're talking about internal energy. While I'm on this subject, let's talk about the hustle. Let's talk about romanticizing the hustle without glorifying burnout before I talk about some of the pillars that I came up with of how to curate a vibe. So, finding meaning in the hustle is really important. So, I think that when we are in school, when we're working a 9 to 5, when we have our hustle and our constant productivity culture, it's easy to do your to-do list, keep adding things to your to-do list, be as productive as possible, fill your calendar as much as you can to avoid feeling things, to feel productive, to feel perfect, to take a step forward towards your goals. We've always been told and taught that the meaning behind the hustle is to get to the next step, to move forward in your life. And that's why it's easy to romanticize. It's easy to see it as something that is serving a purpose to you and something that is fulfilling your life because you've always been told that it's fulfilling your life. You put on a playlist, you do your work, you get sucked in to a task. And being in that hustle is not bad. It's what you have to do to live your life. Maybe you're doing a job that you really love. Maybe you're trying to look for a job that you really love. And if you're doing something important or important to you or important to the progression of some purpose or some goal for the business, then it's easy to find the meaning behind it. You know, I work for a nonprofit. And so it's hard for me to disconnect myself from my job since I don't have a standard structure. And I, romanticize it as if I'm going after something, I'm doing something good for the world, which I am. And it's good to romanticize the hustle and what you're doing. But it's also good to romanticize self, and that's the part that we weren't taught to do. That's the part that was never framed to us as important. What's healthy is to contextualize your effort. What does the to-do list really mean? What category does it fall into? What is it leading towards? Or is it just something to keep you busy and keep you active? Or is it something that you could say no to, but you don't because you want to be busy? And then there's honoring your dedication. A lot of the times when we're talking about being a perfect girl and being productive, it comes off as negative in this context of like this podcast. It can come off as negative to have those things, but it is not negative. We love the hustle. We love to go after our goals and our achievements. And if it's something that we really want to do, having goals and having the dedication and the hustle is so important. And being proud of yourself and recognizing that you have this dedication is healthy. What's unhealthy is avoiding rest and justifying your exhaustion. Literally feeling so fatigued, so burnt out, so much like I I'm dying right now, but I can't rest, or resting in a form that is unintentional, like doom scrolling without intention, turning on the TV and then scrolling on your phone. Resting without intention is avoiding rest. The way to really feel restful is to do it intentionally, have a transition moment, which I'll talk about in a minute, and move into a restful period without having to justify the exhaustion by moving so quickly. You have to remember that masculine energy executes while feminine energy gives texture. And you need a blend of both to have a productive and meaningful life. Integration will prevent the resentment of your external demands. So, having a balance between these two will encourage the best you can be in both of these areas. So, let's talk about how to romanticize your life actually. So, we're going to start easy with vibe creation. Step one to romanticizing things and creating the story is to start with the obvious places. So, where and how do we create a vibe? Pillar number one, visual atmosphere. So, the backgrounds, lighting, ambient visuals, and wardrobe. Those are all important. Being pillar one, this is where I think it can come off feeling the most performative because you're creating an atmosphere of things that you like to look at and is purely like for aesthetic purposes to create the mood using aesthetics, using textures, using ambiance of what you're looking at, the visual of it, and that's why it can feel performative. But I really think that the performative comes from thinking, how will people perceive this? How will this be perceived? For example, in my life, I have flowers in my house 100% of the time. I go to Trader Joe's, I get the like $3 flower bouquets. Sometimes I get two if I think that they'll go cute together. I come home, I cut off all of the ends, I put in the flower food, and I arrange them so that I think they look pretty from all angles. And I let them sit there for as long as flowers live, and then I change them. And whenever my friends come over or I have parties or whatever, no one even notices that they're there. But I look at these flowers every single day and they make me happy. And something about having flowers in my home feels very romantic to me, even if I gifted them to myself. And even if it's just that I'm looking at these. Right now, I have purple roses and baby's breath in my kitchen, and they're in a corner in the back, and only I look at them, and they're just for me. But they make me feel like my life has a little bit of bloom, a little bit of color, something that I enjoy just for me. And if you're thinking, I don't want to go to Trader Joe's, I don't even live by a Trader Joe's, I don't want to cut flowers and arrange them, and I wouldn't even care. And if no one is coming over to look at the flowers, then what's even the point of having flowers? And what I say to that is, then maybe flowers are not your jam. Maybe that's not the way that you create the aesthetics of romanticizing your life for you. Maybe you have something that makes you happy, like pink pillowcases on your couch, or maybe you switch out the photos in your frames every season so that they match the season, and that congruency makes you happy. It could be something so small and so simple and something just for you. The aesthetic doesn't have to be some crazy big external ambiance. It just has to be something small that makes you happy. I like YouTube videos that are cottages with steaming cups of tea and snowy mountains out the window. And it's free on YouTube, and I put it on. And maybe you don't like that. Maybe you prefer a bustling street window or something like that. The point is to create a space where you can look at it just for you without the perception of the outside world and think, wow, I'm really glad that I put the effort into myself enough, just this little tiny bit, and I feel happy looking at it. knowing that I took those couple of minutes to change something or add something or remove something that wasn't causing me joy, but now it does. And I think it's important to remember that vibe creation, aesthetic, ambiance, setting up flowers in your home, whatever you're doing, was important before we all started filming ourselves doing it. And it can be important after without being performative. You just have to switch the mindset of perception. And on the visual atmosphere also is internal atmosphere. So having an internal container where you focus on the moment. You're not thinking about what comes before, you're not thinking about what comes after, you're thinking about the moment that you're in right now. And having this internal container surrounded by this visual atmosphere that creates the beginning of this story, setting the scene, so to speak. Pillar number 2, playlists. Creating a soundtrack, music as emotional architecture. So, figuring out what feeling you want to be feeling, and then using music as the emotional architecture to feel that way without having to force it in yourself and be as if you're playing a part. You really want to feel the things you want to be in the moment, and you want to feel the things that you're trying to create instead of pretending like you're feeling the things you're trying to create. And music is a great way to do this. And I have different playlists for different states, and not all of them I created. Some of them are just Spotify playlists, and I will attach a couple of them to the show notes on Spotify. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts right now, I do not know how to do that on Apple Podcasts, but I will talk about my process. And you can think about this like when you're reading a book or watching a movie. When you're reading a book, the different scenes that are in them, if you were writing that scene, what song would you be listening to? Or in a movie, they obviously have soundtracks and they pick the song to match the moment. When I'm picking a playlist, I try and blend what I'm feeling right now with what I want to be feeling. For example, when I'm working on something, maybe I'm making a slideshow presentation, or maybe I'm writing emails, doing some mindless admin work, I will put on this playlist called something like Hype Study So You Don't Fall Asleep or So You Stay Awake, something like that. And it's a bunch of old One Direction songs, Disney songs, some show tunes, some 21 Pilots, songs that I know and have known forever. And my ADHD brain is then able to take the fun atmosphere of the music and make the admin work that I'm doing a little bit less mindless and a little more fun because I'm able to sing along to these songs that I really like while also, being in the mindset of positivity and expression while doing these things that I don't consider very fun. If, however, I'm doing a task that requires a lot of mental energy, if I'm proofreading a proposal or if I'm writing something in depth and I can't listen to something with a lot of words, I need to really focus, then I like to listen to dark gothic classical music. And sometimes I'll light a candle and play this dark classical music, and I will set myself in the scene of being like a gothic editor kind of a situation to really kind of represent the vibe that I'm trying to create while also having myself be productive during this work task. But it also works for other things. Sometimes I'll turn off all the lights in my apartment and I'll light some candles. I have these flameless candles that I got from Anthropology with a gift card, and I love them because I don't think I'm going to burn my house down. So I have these flameless candles and I will light them and I will put on this dark gothic music, and I will take a dark shower, which is a shower where you turn off all the lights and you're very mindful about your actions. You move as slowly as you can and you feel the water on your skin, and you listen to this dark classical music in the dark with your lit candle. It's a flameless candle, so I feel like it's fine. And, then I'll walk around the house and be in this gothic story of life that I'm creating. If I'm in the mood for it, I have this one playlist, and I'm not always, but I have this apron that I put on over my outfit, and I put on a playlist called like Falling in Love in the 90s or something like that. And I'm not a trad wife by any means, but I do love to listen to the 90s music and make dinner or make bread and just dance around my kitchen feeling like I'm in some old-timey romance film. And it brings a lot of joy into the process of making dinner because I feel like I don't know, like I'm doing something for myself and like it's a very romantic atmosphere that I'm creating, even if it's just something as simple as making dinner. But I move slowly and I cut my vegetables and I'm singing Frank Sinatra. And for some reason, it really puts me in the headspace of like feeling like it's a moment and like I don't know, it's something that makes me happy. And I don't know why I initially started doing this. Picking playlists for things. At first, it started with my ADHD brain needing some sort of stimulus outside of the admin work that I was doing. And then I just started curating playlists for everything. One of the playlists that I have that I made is called Jade Dreams, and it's a lot of Marina and the Diamonds, Lana Del Rey, things like that. And I listen to it when I'm in a really like pensive mood or if I'm needing to feel like I'm riding in a convertible down a windy highway with my scarf blowing in the breeze and flying off back into the mountains. If I'm feeling that way, I have another one that is a lot of like female power ballads if I'm feeling like I need a lot of feminine rage at the moment. So, playlists are very important for the curation of a vibe, even if it's not necessarily about romanticizing the moment, but just to help you find focus or help you find some sort of inner state that you need. But that's step one, getting your inner state where you want it to be and mixing what you're feeling right now with what you want to be feeling and blending that together to create the playlist and create the vibe or whatever is important. And then having, I don't know, a YouTube video ambiance in the background that matches that vibe. Sometimes if I'm listening to my dark classical, I'll have a YouTube video on my TV and I'll mute it so that it doesn't play whatever it plays. But it'll look like snowy mountains or a candlelit cottage. Or if I'm studying, I'll put on like a study with me video and it'll be like I'm body doubling and someone else is there. And we're listening to lo-fi together and studying or doing work or whatever we need to be doing. The third pillar is slowness. So, resistance to urgency culture, letting moments land, increasing awareness and intuition. So, physically slowing yourself down, not moving as quickly as you possibly can, and allowing yourself to be in a moment of slowness and mindfulness instead of the quickness. A good example of this is going on a walk. So, when you're on a walk, you want to walk as fast as you can and get where you're going. Maybe you're listening to some like banger music, you're moving quickly, and maybe that's the vibe that you want. But if you're really trying to romanticize your walk, what I like to do is I put on slow music, or sometimes I'll listen to a podcast in French. I don't speak French, but I think that the French is like very romantic and it makes me feel like I'm walking in the French countryside and creating this moment. Plus, it's good for my brain to listen to French, even if I don't know it. And I walk slowly, hands in my pockets, listening to French podcasts, and I take note of the trees and I look around and I see the dogs. And sometimes I'll sit on a park bench. I live very close to a park and I'll sit on a park bench and I will literally just sit there, no phone, sometimes no music, nothing. And I will look at the grass and I will people watch and I will notice my breathing and find the last pillar is imagery and narrative. So I've already touched on this, but what movie am I in right now? Turning ordinary moments into meaningful ones. And while the movie imagery and the scene imagery works when you're first starting out, the point of romanticizing moments and romanticizing your life is to turn ordinary moments into meaningful ones. If you think about like before we had phones and social media and Bridgerton era kind of a deal. They would sit there and embroider for hours. They would read books. They would go on promenades with their friends. And ordinary moments were meaningful ones. Small moments that today we take for granted because we just want to be on to the next thing were meaningful. So if you use these practices to turn making dinner into a meaningful moment for you, maybe then you'll love making dinner and it will be a sort of peace in your life. and it will help you move towards that feminine energy of finding peace and building that relationship with your inner self because it will help you to realize who you are and the things that you really value. The fifth pillar is transition moments. And I'm going to talk about this for a minute because transition moments are so important. It's the moments that romanticizing your life relies on. Abruptly switching from work to rest keeps the nervous system activated and it keeps it in that fight or flight kind of stress mode. What transition moments help do is close the productivity loop. So the other day I was having a real problem with the productivity loop. It was freezing outside, so I couldn't go on any walks throughout the day. I was having a really heavy workload day. I had a lot of meetings, a lot of reports that I had to do. And after I was done with my whole to-do list, I just wanted to rest and relax. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't relax, why my brain was constantly on this loop of, I should be doing more. I need to add some more things to my to-do list. What's next? I was overwhelmed. I had racing thoughts, mental chatter, even though there wasn't really anything else that I wanted to do for the day. The productivity loop also comes from unfinished tasks that linger. Maybe if you have an email that you've been keeping on unread for a few days and you just don't want to answer it, and other tasks that you put off, they weigh on you even if you aren't in it right now. So the transition moment is the symbolic closure of the productivity loop. It's ending work intentionally instead of just drifting to the next thing. It's closing your computer, doing a transition, and then resting. And romanticizing your life supports progress towards intention and self discovery in this way. Using this pillar of transition moments, you can find more intention because you need to make the choice to move to the next thing instead of feeling so burnt out and falling on the couch and doing nothing, doom scrolling for the rest of the night while thinking about work continuously. This is the intentional choice, the transition moment to move to rest or to another task. For example, I have a couple of different responsibilities. I have podcast, work, etc. And if I'm moving between working and podcast, I will always do a transition moment because it's hard for me to get out of the nonprofit mindset and move into my podcast if I don't have a transition moment first. So it's really to just switch your mindset and where your head is. So some examples of a transition moment are going for a walk, changing your music, a shower, changing your clothes, changing location, stretching, shutting off things, closing the book physically, a signal to your brain that we are done with that and we're moving on to something else. You wake up in the morning, you're in your pajamas, you make your coffee, you sit on the couch and do your Wordle of the day, and then you change clothes into real clothes, even if you're staying home, which then tells your brain, okay, work mode. We are going to sit at our desk and we're going to do our tasks for the day. In the middle of work, before lunch, you go on a little walk. Signal to your brain, okay, great, we're transitioning into something else. You come back, you eat lunch, then maybe you get up and you turn on different music and you reopen your computer to work a little bit more. Or maybe you change from your desk over to the dining room table. Physically change location. This is a signal to your brain that we're switching tasks. We're switching over to something else. And then for switching from work to rest, I like to take a shower, do some stretching, change into maybe a different lounge set. I always go on a walk before I take my shower, or I'll do a little workout before I take my shower just to get the active part of my day ended with something that I want to do, like walking, and then take a shower to signal to my brain, okay, that's it. We're done for the day. We're moving to something a bit more relaxing. And then usually after my shower, I'll make dinner and I'll eat dinner and then I'll settle in for the night with a book or a TV show. Romanticizing lives in the in between. We can be slow and play music all day, but if we jump too fast, we force. Transition moments create safety and completion. To end this episode, I want to talk about a couple of hangups, reasons why romanticizing your life may feel wrong or may not work right away, just so that you can recognize some of these hangups and then notice when they're stopping you from creating meaningful moments in your life so that you can move past them. So the first one is guilt about it. It's easy to romanticize work and then you struggle to romanticize rest. So it's easy to put on your work clothes, sit at your computer, put on music, go on a walk, eat lunch, come back, switch locations, and continue to work. But it's hard to romanticize rest. It's hard to put on a comfort show and not feel the guilt of doing that. Like you should be doing something more productive, which is where those transition moments and closing that productivity loop help. But rest is countercultural. Our culture teaches us to be constantly productive. And so if you are romanticizing rest, or if you're listening to 50s music while making dinner, you could feel like you're going against the culture and things that you believe in. But listening to 50s music while I make dinner does not mean that I have those values. It means that I really enjoy listening to the romance of the moment and creating a moment for myself while I make myself dinner. But that leads us to an important point, perception. I want to do an episode about perception because it's so important to the life of a perfect girl. But when you are romanticizing your life, why should perception matter? It's hard to get over that hurdle of perception and being perceived, but the perception only lasts for a moment. And sometimes to find bravery and make the meaning of a moment be personal, you have to overcome that hurdle and you have to count to 3 and force yourself to do it. And eventually it won't feel weird. But it's important to start small. If you feel like you're being perceived, to start with things that have less of a perception. So doing it in the privacy of your own home or with AirPods in, whatever you're doing. Then, of course, there's always the perfectionism aspect. So, trying to force a mood when you're not really feeling that mood, or not having it work out right away, not finding the right playlist right away, wanting to keep that all or nothing mentality, maybe wanting to romanticize every single thing that you do in every aspect of your life, which, of course, sometimes is just not feasible. Sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do, and sometimes there's no way to make them fun or make them feel meaningful or important. And it's just something that we have to do. And there are things that we can do to romanticize them in some ways, but, it may not be perfect. Or even maybe having an expectation of what romanticizing is. So maybe thinking it will fix all of your problems or it'll put you in Bridgerton. Bridgerton came out today, so I'm thinking about it a lot. Or I don't know, having it not work out completely the way that you expected immediately and not being able to romanticize every moment or only being to romanticize ones that you maybe already do romanticize, but just considering it romanticizing your life. I feel like that can be a hang up for a perfect girl because we have this all or nothing mentality, but it's important to keep trying. And if you want to feel a way, if you want to romanticize your life, if you want to move slower, if you want to feel something different, or maybe move into a new phase where you're recognizing your internal energies more, it's important to keep trying. Breaking the mold of a perfect girl is a practice like anything else. You have to practice, and it may never be perfect, but you have to keep going. Another hangup is escapism. Romanticizing your life can become avoidance. Within the moments, if you're thinking of your life as a movie, and then you start to turn down opportunities in pursuit of the movie that you think you should be writing for yourself, or you pull back from the actions of life to find some sort of mood, then you can escape your real life. And that's not a good result of romanticizing your life. And it's not the point. The point is not to pull back from your life and to escape your life and to escape the thoughts by pretending to be someone else. It's about relating differently to what exists. It's about finding meaning in the moments. Presence includes discomfort. If you're romanticizing your life and you feel the discomfort, presence includes that. Being in the moment includes discomfort. And stillness does not equal numbness. Romanticizing your life allows your reality to be experienced. It is not meant to change your reality, although it can help you find what you want and move forward to create the reality that you're reaching for, but it's not to alter the reality that you're in. The last hang up is aesthetics. So, kind of like I said in escapism, it's not about creating a performance. It's not about recording yourself doing something because you think that that's the only way to find the romanticism in it. It's about curating a vibe for yourself. It's about building self trust. And romanticizing your life is a practice of listening to what you want, to listening to that softness and the positive inner voice. It's moving away from borrowed definitions to build that self trust. It's not about changing life, but noticing it and moving forward. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you learned something about romanticizing your life, and I hope that you related a little bit to how I romanticize mine. If you liked this episode, I would really appreciate it if you would follow and rate the podcast. Any interaction really does help. Maybe comment your favorite way to romanticize your life so that other listeners can look at the comments and find some ideas for how to romanticize their life. If you are on Instagram and you would like to follow the podcast Instagram, it is darksideofperfect.pod. That is darksideofperfect, period, Pod. I hope you're finding joy wherever you are today. I hope you're romanticizing your life wherever you are today. And I will see you next time.